Hello and welcome to Forever Wild, the environmental education show in Horry County Schools. My name is Ben Abercrombie. Today we're going to have hamp shooting of the Waccamaw Riverkeeper program. We're going to do the Wildlife of the Waccamaw, otherwise known as the Wild Waccamaw program. We're going to be going along the river, showing you lots of beautiful areas, such as the one we're sitting in here right now over this blow-down log. This is a little braided channel off the Waccamaw. We're going to show you some of the wildlife, some of the fish in the river, some of the creatures that are in the water, how the floodplains, a little bit about how the floodplains work. And then we're going to tell you guys a little bit about the Waccamaw Riverkeeper program specifically and how you can get involved. Come on out with us and let's check out wildlife on the Wild Waccamaw. This is Hamp Shooting of the Waccamaw Riverkeeper program. He's going to be our special guest today. He's going to be kind of like our tour guide and our person that is our expert in the Waccamaw area. And I'm sure he didn't want to hear that word expert because he just says, man, I'm just a fireman in my other job. He's actually told me that before, but he knows a lot about this river. Don't kid yourself, folks. And he has a really good mission for this river. Hamp, will you tell us a little bit about your Riverkeeper program, just a little bit to kind of lead off, and then we'll go into other areas.
The Riverkeeper program is a river environmental and conservation program. It's a model that's used not only in the United States and Canada, but it's now growing throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a program that's based on local involvement and primarily people who love the river and love the water in the area, and they want to take care of the river. A lot of our program is volunteer based.
Okay.
I might have the title of Riverkeeper, but the real heart and soul of our operation are our volunteers that get out and do the work and help do the programs and patrol the rivers.
Gotcha.
And so we're primarily a volunteer-based river conservation environmental program.
Interesting, interesting. And who helps sponsor your Waccamaw Riverkeeper program?
The Waccamaw Riverkeeper program is sponsored by a group called the Winyah Rivers Foundation.
Okay.
And it's a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. And the goal of that foundation is to put a riverkeeper on all the rivers that empty into Winyah Bay. And we started first with the Waccamaw River.
That's neat. That's neat. Well, I tell you what, let's go and see some of the natural features of the Waccamaw, and we'll do some talking back and forth, do some walking and talking, so to speak. Let's first of all see how the floodplains affect the Waccamaw, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Let's go take a look.
So Hamp, I was looking online about this river, and it seems like it said that this was the only river, one of the only rivers in the world that starts out in a Carolina Bay. What is a Carolina Bay, and what is unique about this river and how it starts?
Well, Carolina Bay, of course, are your elliptically shaped formations on the east coast of the United States.
Right.
And they are from northwest to southeast, and of course the sand ridge on those is normally to the southeast, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And Lake Waccamaw is the second largest natural lake in the state of North Carolina, where the river originates. Is a flooded Carolina Bay, I guess, is the best description for it.
Okay.
And because the Waccamaw Waccamaw heads up at Lake Waccamaw, and Lake Waccamaw is only one of the areas that feeds the upper Waccamaw. It's surrounded by this massive swamp system, the green swamp and the white marsh swamp, and that's one of the reasons it's able to originate up there and maintain as a river. It comes down through North Carolina, down where we are now past Conway and down to Georgetown. Into that entire course, it follows it stays in the coastal plain. And that is a unique feature for a river. I'm told that it is one of the only true coastal rivers in the entire world. That heads up on the coastal plain, flows down the coastal plain, and empties in the coastal plain. Most rivers start in the Piedmont or start in the mountains,
right,
and flow down. For example, the Great PD, which joins the Waccamaw further down, is actually the Yadkin River, and that river heads up in Blowing Rock, North Carolina.
Wow.
So
that's fantastic.
That's a traditional type of river when we think about it. But the Waccamaw is a coastal river, and one of the reasons you see the black water and the flora and the fauna that you see. Lake Waccamaw has 3 endemic fish only to that lake. If you ever want to go up there and do a show, you ought to go up there and do it.
That'd be neat.
And it's the Waccamaw darter, the Waccamaw silverside, and the Waccamaw killifish. And they got trapped there thousands and thousands of years ago. And you can take one of those fish out of the lake and put them in the river down here or just downstream from the lake, and they'll perish. They won't live.
They will.
Because the lake has a completely different chemistry. It has a neutral pH as opposed to the rest of the river, which is a very low pH.
Well, I'll be darned.
So that's one of the more interesting facts about the Waccamaw River and its origins, I should say.
Yeah, that is really cool. Well, Hamp, you had mentioned to me a while ago on the river that every once in a while you'll come upon what's called a hammock or a hummock. I believe, like you said, they say in Florida.
I believe that's what they call it there.
What is a hammock? Kind of explain a little bit about hammocks. What are they?
Well, for some of the folks, if I can plug a book, The River Home by Mr. Burroughs,
Okay.
originally called Ori and the Waccamaw. If you've read that book, he refers to hammocks in his book,
All right.
where you go along and canoe along the river and you're looking for a high place to go camping when you're in this big swampy area. One of the things you need to look for are pine trees. And in this area, you see we've got an abundance of pine trees, and we've got some very high land where, in this case, some people have been camping, haven't cleaned up after themselves very well.
Definitely.
But one of the ways to spot some higher ground in the swampy low country is indeed to look for your pine trees.
Gotcha, gotcha. So that's if you see a pine tree, chances are you're in a little hammock or a good spot to have a camp.
It's possible. I've seen some, of course, where they're in the high ground is that big around.
Right.
But in this case, you've got several, and it's a good example of a hammock along the Waccamaw River.
Interesting. And we're looks like probably about approximately 10 feet above the water level today down there.
Yeah, the tide's dropping a little bit, but this is a good, even during high water, this area will stay pretty dry.
Pretty dry, because the adaptations of pines typically, like this giant loblolly pine you have behind you, are to have dry roots. If they have wet roots, they drown. So that's why you find the pines in your little hammock or camp areas along the river. Interesting. As you see here, there's another kind of unique tree around here. This is one of them found near water a lot of the times, but it's just off of the water past the sand dune systems, usually on the coastal region. This is a live oak, mighty majestic live oak, and it's gotten so old. Shoot, this tree here is probably, I estimate, over 100 years old. The way it looks like it's split at the trunk. It's even got what they call epiphytes. Epi means on the surface of, phyte meaning plant, and that is simply a resurrection fern right there that's growing on the surface of that mighty live oak tree there. And I'm sure that resurrection fern, the reason why it's called resurrection fern is it looks dried up and dead in that state right there. You can look all over, it's just wilted. And when the rain comes back, as you can tell, ferns like wet areas, they'll just soak up a bunch of water, and it looks like they come right back to life. And they're producing spores during that period of time. You can see the little dried up spore cases on its backside.
They're beautiful.
Interesting. Let's take a look at one more issue here. I think you've got kind of a conservation issue as you're looking around at this little hammock area. This is evidently a campsite, and I see some things that are out of place here. What do you see that can be done better by the campers that left here?
Well, the first thing is to pick up their beer cans and their trash that they've left behind. Is the first step. And back over here in this hole, they've dumped a whole bunch of trash, some plastic and chairs.
Right.
They've left their rope. So they obviously had tarps and tents and things like that. That needs to be taken up. One of the things that's happened is we're in the area. This particular area is not, but we're in the area of the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge.
Oh.
And Craig Sasser the director, the manager, for the time being, had to stop camping in that area because this sort of thing got so bad that the trash was almost unbearable. There were stacks of beer cans that were dismounted. And I've had a lot of people come up and say, y'all doing a great job cleaning up the river, when in fact it wasn't us. It was Mr. Craig Sasser and his staff and some of the folks he's gotten out to clean up the lower part of the river. And it's a real problem. It's a sign of disrespect.
Right.
And it's something that folks just need to do, is pick up after yourself, just like you would at home.
Right.
And take it out of here.
Exactly.
That's all we need to do.
Exactly. What is it? Leave only footprints, take only memories. That's kind of the leave no trace camping ethic, and that's a good thing to reinforce here for sure.
And this is the trash you see in lower areas that ends up out on the river and really disgraces the river.
Gotcha, gotcha. So people at camp will have to take note of that for sure.
They should.
Understood. All right, let's go check out a different little habitat right now. Let's walk kind of toward a lowland, and so we'll show you some of the difference in the plant communities and some of the floodplain areas. Let's go. As we're walking through here, we have just walked along from our little hammock area, and we're coming down to a little bit lower ground in here, but we're still on high ground as we speak. We've hit upon something very interesting. You might know this as the cat briar if you hunt. It's got a little cat claw shape to the briar. This thing is the wild blackberry, and it's an excellent food source for your everything from your squirrel to your deer to your turkey. They love to eat this stuff. This is fantastic. And if you're ever out in May or June in the coastal plain, you see this stuff, make sure you get the black ones. Check them out for any kind of bugs or anything. And if you want to, just throw them in your mouth and eat them. They're really good, really sweet. Kind of a good little snack along your way. That's neat. There's a wild blackberry out here, look like. Oh, here's your blueberry right behind you. Hamp's kind of cueing it here. This is also known as your sparkleberry bush. A lot of people call it sparkleberry, but it's a wild form of vaccinium. It's a blueberry species. You see this? This is another one that you can eat if you would like. Be very careful though. There's some of these berries that look identical to this called inkberries that come out at a different time of year. And if you eat it, it has a very powerful laxative to it, and you will know it all night long if you eat those. So these right here, they are good. This is your wild blueberry. Well, Hamp, this is kind of interesting. This stuff we're standing on feels kind of like a wet sponge.
Yeah, it is.
What is this right here? What are we standing in?
We've come down off the high area, the hammock area, and we've come down in this Poquoson swampy area that's so typical of the swamps in the Waccamaw River.
You say Poquoson, P-O-C-O-S-S-I-N?
I believe that's how you spell it.
Poquoson.
Poquoson.
You say I always say Poquoson, but it's Poquoson.
That's how I've always heard it.
Okay, Poquoson. Gotcha.
Poquoson.
And basically a Poquoson is to a wetland kind of what a hammock is to a dryland. It's almost like a little island in the middle of a bunch of dry areas.
Good way to describe it, yeah.
Okay, interesting. That's neat. And it's basically a temporary thing, right? Is a Poquoson temporary or permanent wetland?
Well, they flood and go down, but they're soggy, like you see.
So they'll stay soggy most of the time?
And the plants that are here depend on that wetness.
Okay. Neat. Well, as you look here, a lot of your plants depend on this wet soil, and as you can see, all you got to do is squeeze that soil right there, and that water just comes right out. I mean, that soil is just full of it, absolutely saturated soils. Definitely a wetland area. And what is important about your wetland soils to the cleanliness of the river?
They're a filtration process. The swamp, the waters flood. They come into this area and it gets flooded, and that's a good thing. We want that to happen. That's a natural process that cleans the swamp out, and of course the water percolates down into the ground, recharges our groundwater, acts as a natural filtration system, and helps the process of keeping our water clean take place.
Interesting, interesting. So even though we're seeing almost like real muddy water that you're squeezing out there, that's actually a cleaning process. Almost like cleaning the blood falls on the kidneys. Wetlands clean the blood of the land, which is actually our waters that carry life.
Good description. This is a wetland.
Our systems.
This is one of the wetlands that we try to protect.
Interesting.
And try not to destroy because they are important to the water cycle and our water quality.
Okay. Now, I know you've probably been educated by a lot of people about your cypress knees, but why in the world are we seeing these big bumpy cypress knees like this guy right here behind you and this one right here? What is special about that? Why to a cypress tree? Do you know?
Well, it is the root system for the cypress tree. And we've got some rather large ones around us.
Okay.
And it's part of the root system for the cypress trees.
That's neat. And they're called the ball cypress. Why would they be called the ball cypress? Here's a little baby one right here. It would be some leaves of your cypress. That's what they look like this time of year. What would that look like in the wintertime, that little plant right there on one of these trees?
I always call it, in the wintertime, I always call it rusting.
Rusting?
When the winter comes, the leaves, they're not evergreens.
Right.
They rust. They turn brown. And whenever the cypress leaves start to turn brown or rust in the winter or in the late fall, you always know winter's on the way.
Gotcha. And do they drop their leaves in the wintertime?
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
And that's why they're called the ball cypress. I think they're the only one in North America, I believe I read, that loses its leaves. believe so. Interesting. This always reminds me of some kind of little gnome. I want to see a little creature run out from behind this thing, little mythological creatures.
Yeah, a lot of people, well, you see people cutting them, of course, for decorative purposes, and we certainly don't like to see that.
So we like to conserve these instead of cutting them.
Yeah, they're part of the process. You can see a lot of them as you can't see very well with the camera, but
right.
And maybe we'll get to another place where we can see more of them.
Tons of them in here. Well, we're standing here on a big old massive bunch of roots that has been uprooted from the ground in the wetland soils. And as you can see, when this last big wind came through, it toppled this big oak tree behind us, and a couple of these other trees, like this one right here, this massive maple. As you can tell, a lot of these plants that like to live in wetter areas, they put out shallow root systems. They're not extremely deep root systems, so they are a little more susceptible sometimes to wind. The only trees that really put down really deep tap roots out here in the swamp systems are your larger pines here. They've got to get down to the water, and that's your higher ground. That's right here behind us here. These lower areas are real prone to having wind damage. It's kind of neat. Now you can see here's a cypress knee growing up in a little hole left in the forest floor by the roots. Roots are extraordinarily important to the conservation of wetlands. These roots here act as a filter. See all these little root hairs? Put it to you this way, one tree, and let's say there's a tree that's 75 feet tall, and a 75-foot radius all the way around the base of that tree, up to 8 to 10 feet deep, you'll have a root mass that's just grabbing on the tons and tons and tons, literally tons of soil, and holding it in place. If you remove those trees, as we'll see later with hemp, it can do a massive amount of damage in a short period of time due to erosion and flooding problems, sedimentation of the river. So these roots are extremely important, especially to wetland areas, to keep intact. Really just about anywhere. Trees are some of the most adaptive creatures on Earth to hold soil as well as they do. We'll check that out later. Well, what we found here is what we call an intertidal zone or interflood zone plant, found primarily along your river systems within the South Carolina coastal basins, all the way up through Columbia. It goes all the way up to the fall line. It's one of the most beautiful flowers in South Carolina, also one of the most rare, because it only lives in that little boundary that's intermittent flooded. Since this is a tidal basin here, technically it rises and falls, it fits the perfect habitat regime for the shoal spider lily. The reason why it's called the shoal spider lily, if you'll take a look at the flower, looks like it's got little spider's legs, and this is extra modified. Look at that, petals coming way off the base of the stalk here. See there? It's got a beautiful, beautiful bunch of anthers with the pollen on it sticking out right here. You can see the pollen coming off of my finger. It's just a light, lacy, delicate flower. If you're out there, do not pick this flower. It is a rare plant in South Carolina, something to be honored and cherished, but is one of the most beautiful little creatures popping out along the banks right now. Right now, it's close to the middle of May this year, and that's about the time you're going to see the shoal spider lily popping up. And they pop up for probably 2 or 3 week cycle. Really a beautiful plant. Of course, that long little gadget right there is what they call the stigma, or sticky stigma. That's the female part of the flower. Shoal spider lily, one of South Carolina's prettiest plants. It's right here on the Waccamaw. Well, we've pulled up here on a little stretch of nice, pretty sand bank, and we're going to follow some mammal tracks up on the land here. What kind of mammal, we're not sure. We looked in the book, and some of the tracks have eroded, and it's got a twisted pattern to the tracks. You can see where the animals come in and stuck its claws down and twisted, kind of a wobbling fashion. Here's one set of tracks, here's the other set of tracks, 2 by 2 by 2. We're going to assume that it is a river otter because it's come up here on the bank. And Hamp looked up here and he said, look up there, that's where they've been wallering. And if you follow the tracks right up here, you can look in the sand and you can see where one animal was very long and it wallered in the sand here, and another animal was very long, kind of wallered in the sand here. So it looks like they played together, and they've kind of walked around here. It looks like they're trying to dig something up, maybe a mole cricket that is in the sand right here. Here's a little mole cricket trail right here. It's kind of cool. Well, Hamp, let's kind of swing over here to Mr. Hamp, and what is important about this site?
One of the reasons we stopped here also is this is one of the sections that is now part of the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge.
Right.
We talked about it earlier. I mentioned it before. This is an area that is going to be preserved now, and will remain natural, and will be enjoyable for people to use. They're doing some kind of work over here. I don't know what they're going to be doing, but I've visited this site before, And there was so much trash and so much debris that from people abusing this site that I literally saw a boat full of folks come in here one day that wanted to use it. They had to pick up all the trash themselves before they could even enjoy it.
Oh, what a
and now
shame.
we pull up here, and you can see that it's looking a lot nicer. It's a lot cleaner. We got a little fire pile here, a bunch of ashes, but this is now something that's enjoyable within the the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge.
Right.
That's much cleaner and is available for folks to use. You can't camp here yet, but hopefully they'll get around to that. But right now it's a lot nicer and available for everybody.
And this is a nice example of hands-on conservation in action.
Absolutely.
That's really neat. Cool. So next time you're out on the Waccamaw, come look for a spot like this. It's beautiful.
And leave it this way.
Definitely. If you've ever camped a lot, like we have on a river or anywhere when you're in the outdoors, look for paper birch, because it is one of the best trees around due to its papery bark. And this papery bark is adapted for fire survival. The fire would come in, a natural wildfire might be able to come in. Of course, even though we're next to a river, it is predominantly prone to wildfire every once in a while. I mean, that's part of a natural system. Not very often, but you do get it. And when it burns through, it will burn this bark off very quickly, leaving the inner bark or the cambium layer just below the bark living inside the tree. Well, we can take advantage of that, just like the Native Americans would. Wow, that's a bear scrape right there. 1, 2, 3. Didn't even see that. You see right there? Where his claws came in and scraped that wood? That's really cool. Anyway, you come in here and you can pull this bark back, just like this, and pull strips of it off. And it's just like having your own commercial paper that you brought out for fire starter material. Just peel that off, put it in the base of your fire, light it up, and even on a wet, rainy day, you pull these inner bark layers off and they're just about dry as a bone. So it's a great fire starter material. Right there's a sign of a black bear. 1, 2, 3 claws, scraping just like that. That is really cool. He clawed that like a scratching post. What are you doing there, Hamp?
Well, right above your scrape, and we noticed a wire that had been left here probably by some campers or some boaters a long time ago. And that'll eventually kill the tree, I believe. And so we're taking this off. Hopefully that'll help this tree live a long time.
There you go. Some more hands-on conservation.
Get this out of here.
I tell you, Hamp is always grabbing stuff, doing stuff, getting litter, doing this. So he's a real good example of being an active hands-on conservation person.
As a matter of fact, I got to get my wire cutters to finish this one.
I got it. I pulled it off.
No, it's wrapped around this cypress, too.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. There. There you go. There we go. Well, Hamp, what is special about the black water in the Waccamaw? Why is the water black?
The water is black from all the organic material that you find in the swamps and in the river.
Okay.
From the trees, the tannin. People talk about tannic acid or tannin, and the tannin leaches out of the leaves and the trees and all the organics, just like out of a tea leaf.
Okay.
Same type of thing.
Interesting.
And a lot of people hear us talk about black water. They think it's dirty water, or you can't see in it, and that sort of thing.
Right.
And you can see down here very clearly, and we can see the water is clear.
It is
clear. We can see the bottom. We can see our hand in it.
It sure is clear.
And the best description of black water I've ever read was when someone called it clear ebony.
Huh.
It's clear. My mother called it Coca-Cola water.
Yeah.
And but it's a clear water, and it's stained just like tea is. It looks a lot like tea, of course.
Right.
So the misconception is that it's not. The misconception is that it's not clear, that because it's black and it's dark, it's dirty. It's the complete opposite
Right.
of that. As a matter of fact, the Waccamaw River is used as a source for drinking water.
Okay.
And another reason why it's important for us to protect it.
Gotcha.
And I've done a lot of scuba diving in the river, and you can see very clearly, when you go down and take a light, you can see very clearly what you illuminate.
Right.
So clear ebony has always been the best description of black water that I've always heard.
And the water here has low dissolved oxygen,
Yes.
right? And it also has low pH.
That's
a low
right.
pH indicates a high acid content, correct?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with the amount of pollution this water is able to hold? Does it make it more pollution tolerant, or does it make it less pollution tolerant?
It makes it less pollution tolerant.
Less pollution tolerant. So less pollution will do more damage to the Waccamaw.
Yeah, more pollution, especially the type of pollution that takes oxygen out of the water.
Right.
And those things are definite negatives.
Okay, what are some things that take oxygen out of the water? Give me an example.
Fertilizers, that sort of thing.
Fertilizers going into the water. Okay.
Yeah, things grow. Well, the fertilizer goes in, you get a lot of your plants growing. They take more oxygen out of the water.
Right.
And of course, that hurts the fish.
Well, a lot of people think plants just make oxygen all the time. Actually, plants during the nighttime respire. They breathe oxygen just like people do, just like any other organism. And so at night, the water oxygen levels can crash, get so low, especially in the summer when the water's hot and it can hold less oxygen, that when it comes into a crash mode, it can actually have a fish kill situation on your hands if you have fertilizer going into the river. So it's important to have a buffer zone between you and the river, and not to over-fertilize your lawn or something if you are along the waterways or anywhere.
Good example of that, especially in your smaller waterways in creeks like we talked about earlier,
right,
are particularly susceptible to that because you don't have the volume that you have here. So something you have to watch not only on the river but off the river as well.
Right, and don't discharge your water that comes from your dishwasher or washing machine in the river.
That's right.
Because it has a lot of phosphates and phosphorus and things that can also cause the nutrients to build up in the river and have the same effect.
Sure can.
That's a big okie doke. Well, thank you for telling us about this water. It's really beautiful.
It is.
Clear ebony. Very neat stuff. Black water. You know, let's look back here while we're at this. Check this out. Take my little cup here we found on the bank, lay it on the ground here. Take a look here. We've got a couple of critters here, Hamp, that are very interesting. I'll kind of show it to you. If I can catch him, boy, it's going to be a devil time. We got him. One of them is called the... He got out of my darn hands. Hang on. Here we go. It's called the bluegill. Okay? This little guy... Oh, no, that's not the bluegill. It's just small. It's hard for me to tell. This is the red-eared sunfish, otherwise known as the shellcracker. Okay? Red-eared sunfish. He's got a little red spot behind the percular flap right there. When they're this small, it's hard to tell, but as they get bigger, that red spot will get bigger and bigger with them. They get up almost to 2 pounds in this river, don't they? They get very large in this Waccamaw River at some places. You got a reddish eye here, and they're called shellcrackers because they like to go down to the bottom, and they'll get clams such as this Corbicula flaminia, and they'll crack them in their mouth, and they'll eat what's inside of that guy right there, shellcracker. Let's see what else we have in there. Also, we got another little baby brim here. This looks almost identical to the one we caught before, except there's a black spot on the back of the dorsal fin. That's another species of brim. It's called a bluegill. Okay, as you can see, there's kind of a bluish purple tint to that fish. That's why I call him a bluegill on this percular flap there. Very short percular flap, which is this gill cover right here, a little flap right there. Just a beautiful little fish. And bass and bowfin and other fish like to feed on that fish. They're in the panfish family. All right. One other real important fish to the river, and this is one that was actually stocked in these areas back about 100 years ago for malaria control, was where I was reading anyway. This is the mosquito fish. A little mosquito fish right there, and it's just flipping to beat the band. It's got sand on it. That little black spot says developing babies in her belly. She eats a lot of mosquito larvae out of the river, and it's really good. It was used for malaria control, introduced around the turn of the century, turn of the 1800s to 1900s. There we go. Toss her in there. And that is a dragonfly nymph. That's an indicator of really good water quality. It does not grow in heavily polluted water. And it eats up to 25, 30 mosquito larvae a day, sometimes more. It has a little arm-like appendage that comes out on the face like that. It reaches out and catches critters and brings it back to it and eats it. It's kind of like alien. Have a little mouth that comes out like that. They swim by jet propulsion. If we put it in the water right there, we'll just put it in the water like this. It'll just jet through the water by sucking water through the back of its gills there, which are on its tail. Kind of cool. Neat little selection of river critters. We caught this with just a couple of sweeps with a net this morning. And there's tons of life in this river. It's just full of life. Bring your kids out here, enjoy the Waccamaw. It's a wonderful place to be.
You see your marker. In this case, it's the number 12 red marker.
Right.
To the left is the original river channel.
Okay.
That goes on around to what's called Jackson Bluff. Nice little community over there. off
Okay.
of Highway 544.
How many miles south of Conway are we right now?
We're river miles about 3 or 4, I guess.
3 or 4 river miles? Okay.
To the right is a channel that was cut many years ago for the riverboat and the commercial traffic.
Okay.
And this is an old canal, and as we go through that, you'll see the dredge spoil that's been piled up. Well, you see some here.
Wow. Look how
And-
high that is.
And you can see now that this particular section is in the National Wildlife Refuge. You see the Wildlife Refuge sign here.
Right?
Here's a snag in the river. This particular snag can be a problem. We would like to do more about those. Unfortunately, we're kind of strapped right now, but that's the sort of thing we'd like to see a little bit something done with.
So what you're calling it snag is that really long log coming out here. Why does
creating
that
creating a traffic problem, a safety problem. We don't
Okay.
want them all out. I mean, we want most of them to stay. For example, here, and some
Right.
of the ones we've been seeing all day long are absolutely necessary
Right.
for the biology and the welfare of the river, for the fish and that sort of thing. They're nurseries. They're foods. They have food sources for the fish.
Gotcha.
Here's one right here. These two coming up. I don't know if you can see those.
So we need our woody snags.
Absolutely
is what
nothing
you're-
wrong with
what you're
those.
saying. Gotcha.
Not creating a hazard. Probably a real good fishing spot.
Right?
And for those who can catch fish,
Definitely.
here's one that's going to eventually be in the water. That's not a problem as far as we're concerned.
Right? Interesting.
And these sort of natural fish nurseries need to remain as they are.
Good
The
deal.
ones that create a hazard to navigation are indeed a true concern for us.
Okay. What do you do when you find one that is a hazard?
We're limited. We do what everybody else does. I normally carry a saw and some clippers, and I cut what I can out of the way.
Right?
Large ones like that, though, take some expertise and some heavy equipment. And
Right.
we hope to we hope to solve that problem sooner or later.
Definitely. Okay, let's see what else there is
And
on
you
the
can
river.
see some more dredge spoil.
Oh, yeah.
See how it's high?
Sure it is.
But it's very low. This is a real swampy island, low swampy island here.
Now, why was it dredged out, you say?
For commercial traffic, for the barges and the steamboats.
Oh, nice. Okay.
See how nice and straight it is?
Right.
Here's a nice...
Interesting. As you look right here, what we've got in my hand here and growing all out in this floating mat of vegetation here is one of the emergent species of wetland plant. This is called alligator weed. And Hamp is just taking us to this spot because we're on the lookout for an alligator. He just showed his head up there just a while ago and went boosh and made a big splash as he was coming out of that section of alligator weed right there. It is alligator weed's very aggressive plant in ponds, but on the river it provides a very important function. It is a natural filter system, just like all your other plants and your roots. It's producing oxygen and oxygenating the waters. Typically low oxygen water oxygen levels in the Waccamaw, and this is a very important plant to keep that oxygen up during the daylight hours. Provides excellent cover for fish. If you can get down around the base of it, it's even got other kind of plants. You can see the roots here. I just reached down into the water, and there's little aquatic roots growing right up in the water column, sucking up nutrients right there. It's kind of cool. This plant right over here is called parrot feather. I don't know if we can see that or not. Might get a little piece of that in just a minute. It's kind of got feathery fronds growing off the top of it. Looks like little feathers off of the little round stalks there. That's also another little emergent aquatic plant. Really a cool aquatic plant regime in this swamp. All kinds of neat plant habitats out here. Beautiful place. And what a quiet place. You can't hear one thing. There's not one little bit of human noise out here. And that's one of the most powerful things in nature, I think, is to be alone, to be solitude. You know, solitude is one of the hardest things to find in today's world. Oh, he sees it. He sees the alligator. See his eye sticking up right there? Hamp's just spotted him. You see him right out there? That's his eyes. Man, he's a big boy. Look at that. See his eyes? He's just checking us out, looking, hey, man, what are you doing over there in my spot? Looking at him. That is really cool. Of course, alligator would be your top predator in this food chain out here in this aquatic food system. They eat many fish. They can eat anything just about they come across. Ducks, turtles, fish, whatever they want once they get that age. Really important creatures to our habitat and keeping our wildlife populations in check. Keeps it healthy. Let's see if he sneaks back up here in just a minute.
There he is.
You see him? Oh, yeah, yeah, look at him. Look at him out there in the water. Can you see him, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
You got a shot of him?
Yep.
He looks like about maybe a 7-footer. Beautiful. Of course, the ratio of the number of inches between the tip of his nose and the middle point of his eyes in inches equals roughly the amount of feet long he is. That one there looks like he's 7 or 8 between his nose and his eyes, so he's probably 7, 8 feet long. Beautiful creature. Very, very fast creature. Almost like a modern-day dinosaur. American alligator. Look at that white egret up there up in the shadows right there. He's up there hunting fish. Can you zoom in on him up there? That's gorgeous. He's up there just sneaking along in those shallows trying to spear fish. He's one of the world's greatest spear fishermen. Great white egret. Nope, he just went behind a buttress cypress trunk. Beautiful. Very few times in this earth do you have a place where you have almost no human noise whatsoever. And it is a total sense of peace it gives to you. It's really neat. You ought to come check it out. Check it out.
There's a lot of erosion. It used to be further back.
Isn't that amazing? Cool.
And this was used, what they would do is lay the tracks in, log the area out, and then pick the tracks up and everything as they left.
Well, I'll be darned.
And for whatever reason, oh, look at that tree, boy, see that tree that's been uprooted?
Yeah.
That's happened in the last several months.
Oh, okay. So that's an old logging train engine.
As we get in here closer, you'll see the rails.
Isn't that cool?
Still sitting on the rails.
Look how narrow that thing
See, there's some of the track right there.
Isn't that super cool? So what you're saying at one time is a lot of these river basins were logged by looking at this.
They're all like that. If you look at these trees, I'm not an expert on trees by any stretch,
Right.
but these forests are all fairly young.
Right. Right. And they're like secondary growth where the stumps have been cut and they come back in 2 or 3 stands, like even this big maple here is a good example of that. And some of these, wow.
But a little piece of the logging history in this area, which is what used to thrive here.
That's wild. That is neat.
I can't believe we hadn't seen a snake.
Amazing. Huh. History on the Waccamaw. Super cool. A train in the river. Yeah, but it looks like we've got some kind of poles, like a row of poles out here. What is that in the river?
You'll see a lot of the old pilings left over from the logging industry and the timber from the logging industry and from the steamboat era.
Right.
And these were designed to help guide the barges, tie the barges up, and to have docks and things like that. In low water, you can see them. The water's down right now. You've got to be careful in some of these shallow waters because they're covered. Sometimes the water's up.
Huh.
And there's been a lot of boats damaged because of that.
Right.
You can see some of them have been here so long, they've got some growth on them.
They got little trees growing on some of it, look like.
You can see this stretches all the way across.
That's neat.
And there's some more over here.
So the rivers of yesteryear are kind of like the roads of today. They were mostly navigable waters carrying goods, materials, logistical equipment for the country.
They're a very important part of the history and the commerce for this area.
Right.
And this is one of the old ballast stones. You can see there's a squared off one, and they're all up under the trees here. And what used to happen is the sailboats would come up, offload, throw these overboard. They used these as for ballast in the sailing ships to help sail the ship and keep it from going over. And what they would do is offload the ballast stones. They were disposable, and put the cargo, and the cargo would take the weight, would become the weight that the stones were. The whole area is down here. I've been diving here and further down. A lot of stones all over the place. And that's an example, and here we've got some development cutting right through here.
That is fascinating.
And before, so that's an example here. This was a very historic landing years and years ago.
Nets are good for more than one thing. They're good for catching little critters out of the bottom of the river and the swamp and wherever you go, and they're also good for collecting trash. So when you teach your kids something, you bring your family down here to enjoy the river, do your part to pick up trash from the river. As you've seen, the river keeper here has instilled that in us, and every time he goes past something, it's wild. It's just like seeing just a great big beacon out there in the water. He just goes, oh, piece of trash, pulls over and picks it up. We have to do our part to conserve the resources of the river. Okay, let's see here what we got. Right here we've got some of these weeds laid back right now. These are very unique weeds. It's another emergent species. That means species that kind of comes out of the water from the bottom of the aquatic system, the bottom of the river here. This is what we call the tule up in North Carolina. That's kind of a country word for it. I've heard many words for it. Poquoson was one of them, and I may be getting that mixed up with something else. There's several species that have very similar names. It basically has the exact same layout and design of plant is a lily pad, because it's got a very large root structure. It's got hollow stems. I'm going to pull one. I wouldn't recommend pulling all the river weeds, but I am going to kind of show you this one here. Look how strong it is. You can pull the boat out. And as you see here, this has a very large surface area, a lot of surface area. It can turn. Let's say the water's flowing that way. It can turn this way, and this plant can take advantage of the light and the nutrients going this direction in the river. If the river's going this way, it can turn that way. And it won't get ripped up, because it is this kind of hydrodynamic or aerodynamic if it was in the air shape. If you look underneath, there's a whole world that's underneath these lilies, or I say lilies, this tule here, or tule, some people say. They have insect eggs and larvae. Let's get one more and flip it over and see if we can find something. You can see evidence of beetles eating on a lot of these things, so that's the bottom of the food chain for a lot of critters. A lot of different eggs are laid up underneath these things. You might find caddisfly larvae and nymphs under there. Very, very important to our aquatic system, these emergent tules. And you'll see them in patches growing down the river. If you love the largemouth bass fish, some of the best bass cover there is. And bowfin. Bowfin are awesome. We might get to see some of those later. I hope so.
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about earlier was what can property owners do.
Right.
And a lot of the problem comes when they cut down all the natural vegetation.
Right.
And here's an area with natural vegetation, a lot of roots, the root system's kept in place, and you really don't see a whole lot of erosion here.
Right.
Here you've got where they built out, put a seawall up, cut down all the trees, and they get a view of the river, but they could still get a view of the river without cutting all the trees. Some of these people haven't cut all the trees down.
Right.
Also creates a problem for runoff.
Right.
Fertilizers, pesticides, things like that. There's no natural vegetation at all. It all just runs right off and straight in. So what we like to see, even if they're low shrubs, grasses, ground cover,
Right.
things like that can be used to enhance the property, help with natural water filtration, and not try to cut down all the trees.
Exactly.
Is one of the things we'd like to see.
Well, that's wild. In a little bit, let's kind of look at a couple areas that may include a buffer zone, and we'll look at some buffer zone areas and see how that would work. Hemp. This may be one of the most important things that we discuss all day long, or kind of show here. A lot of people out there may be wondering, well, what in the devil are they talking about when they say buffer zone? What is a buffer zone? I mean, is that something special to a river? Hemp, describe to me what a buffer zone, in your opinion, is to the river.
What a buffer zone is an area of vegetation and natural area that is between the river and development.
Natural vegetation, meaning what in this?
Preferably natural vegetation.
Okay.
In this particular case, we've got a new development being built here.
Right.
And they've left some trees up here. They've built a seawall back here. But at this time, we still have somewhat of a good buffer here in the wetland and in the swamp area. And we would like to see this sort of thing left in place.
Right.
Because this is exactly the sort of thing that we were talking about earlier. You cut down all the trees, you take out all the plants. What happens is you get the erosion.
All the soil washes off.
The soil washes off.
Right.
And then you start needing to put more hard structure in and more rocks and that sort of thing. And it becomes a problem. They actually need to have more of that up there.
Right.
But And also, they'll cut it down. We did a situation down in Georgetown County, down in the rice fields area,
Right.
where an individual, out of ignorance, unfortunately, cut down 38 cypress trees just to
Wow.
improve the view of the river.
Wow.
And that's the sort of thing that we don't want to see.
And cypress trees are extraordinarily slow growing, so once
Absolutely.
you cut them, it's very hard it takes a long time to get them back.
And there's an ordinance in Georgetown County in that area to prevent that from happening, but it still happened.
Right.
Things can be done. You don't have to cut down all the trees. You can trim limbs. You can do things, leave what's called visual corridors, so that you look between trees and still
Visual
have
corridors.
a beautiful view.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it probably enhances the view of the river to have trees as a natural part of it.
Right.
And that's one of the
Absolutely.
things that we try to instill in people.
Right.
There are folks that do programs on this. Clemson Extension has their Master Gardener program, and those folks in our area, Gary Forster is one of the folks that runs that program.
Interesting.
Clemson Extension also just put out a publication that's now available for people who own property along waterways and provides a guide for them that says you don't have to cut down everything. Leave yourself some access. Put down those growth, those barriers that leave the natural growth and the root systems and the filtration system in place, and you'll have a nicer place to live. You'll be treating the environment much better.
Right.
It'll probably save you a lot of money in the long run.
Exactly. Much less you'll have oh man. Well, put it this way, if you didn't have this buffer zone here, and as we see we have new development up there, this would be the reverse of that. What would happen if we didn't have this? The next rainstorm that comes by, well, a tree does several functions. Number one, it's got the roots that grab onto the soil. Number two, it drops leaves every year that keep the energy of the rain from hitting the ground at full force. And number three, it disrupts the flow of rain as it comes from the sky, and it actually breaks up the pattern of the energy before it hits the earth. And energy basically causes your erosion. Fast-moving water causes erosion. So if you don't have any kind of buffer or anything that is helping that out to lessen the blow of all that water energy coming in the system, this water here will literally be the color of that soil up there. And those soil particles not only will carry, it can carry pesticides, fertilizers, any kind of runoff that people are applying to their yards. And by the way, pesticides and fertilizers, you shouldn't apply bunches of that anyway because it is bad on your environment to start with. So first of all, everybody out there has got to know, number one, if you have a piece of property on this river, or if you're a developer, or somebody out there looking at this thing and saying, oh, well, my kid liked this show, or something like that, take a real honest look at what your practices are, your business practices are. And you probably already know this and have been told it before. If you haven't, try to leave the vegetative buffers in place because it is a whole lot cheaper. You don't have to put up seawalls. Just like Hemp said, all those benefits come into play. And this river is very close to my heart. It's a gorgeous place. Just having come out on it just for a little bit, it's awesome. But about 100 years ago, like Hemp was saying, we saw that logging train. They went in here and they logged a lot of
These are all
trees
very
out
young
here.
trees.
And so they're just now getting a good foothold.
And the buffer is important along the river, but we also discussed earlier, I believe off camera,
Yeah.
the small streams. The quality of the river is no better than the smaller streams. So even if
okay.
you live in town, like I live inside the city of Conway, you need to take care of your own yard because this massive amount of development that we have in the area, the older neighborhoods, some of the new ones, an example here is Carolina Forest, 35,000 new people in that area.
Right.
Same things apply in homes away from the river as well because that water eventually ends up here.
Exactly.
And there have been documentations of fish kills in our area where one property owner grossly over-fertilized their yard and it caused a fish kill downstream from that. Not a golf course.
Just one property owner.
Not a commercial property, but one homeowner just did that. And of course, when it rained, it washed off into the small stream, caused a fish kill. So those cumulative effects, those cumulative things that can happen affect us all. And we all need to be responsible for it, whether you are fortunate enough to live right on the water or you don't live on the water. We all live close to it ultimately.
So we all need to be our own river keeper.
We all need to adopt that ethic, whether we live in town like I do, live out in the country,
Right.
On a farm or a rural area, or right on the river. We've got to do those things, and there's information available to you, good practical information that will take care of that, and will save you money.
Good deal.
As well. So
Super duper. Another good way to advertise. Say you were possibly a developer interested in some piece of land or something. It looks a whole lot better, and I know a lot of our young generation, when they want to go out and they want to purchase a new home, they're interested a lot, and they've been educated about the environment. So they're looking for the buffer zones. They're looking for healthy places for their children to swim, and they're looking for all these different things. And the habitats and the environments are the #1 thing they come for. Everything else is secondary in Horry County. Even the tourism is secondary. #1, and what brings all the tourists and everybody else here is the natural features of the area.
Absolutely.
Starting with the water's back.
Without clean water, we have no tourism industry.
Exactly.
Whether it be on the beaches or the rivers. And one of the interesting facts, if you flip through and look at a lot of the marketing literature that's being done, what's being marketed is the natural wonders that we have. You have people fishing, you have people canoeing, boating, and that sort of thing. And but we have to just take our share of the responsibility of taking care of that, and not to abuse it. So you're exactly right, and I appreciate you throwing that in there today.
All right, sounds good. Let's go check out some more natural areas.
Okay.
Okay. Here we have an excellent example of one of the tree species that makes its hallmark growing all through the swamps and the Waccamaw River here, and that is the bald cypress. And the base of this tree, as you can see, is wide, and what they call that is a buttressed base. That's an adaptation for survival in water environments where you have soft soils. It helps stabilize the tree in periods of high wind. Another adaptation for survival of that tree is you've got these large nodes sticking up that are called cypress knees. I believe we covered it a little bit earlier in the show. But those knees, scientists believe that that's a way for that cypress to be able to get oxygen down into those roots. That's one theory. They're really not sure, but that is the theory behind those knees. Cypress tupelo swamps. Now, the swamp tupelo is a little different than a cypress. If you look right here behind us, there's a smaller version of it. My shadow's right there on it. It has a buttressed bottom here on the face of that tree. It's also got a water line here. Looks like pollen has made a little water line where the water has gone down a couple of feet the past couple of weeks. As you look up the trunk, it's got broken anastomose, what they call ridges, very broken ridges in the bark, almost like an oak bark, similar to an oak. As you go higher than that, you see these deciduous leaves that it has. There's a very fat, broad leaf. It's an elliptical leaf shaped kind of like your eye, and it's got a pointy, it's a really sharp point on the tip of the leaf. They drop all kinds of seeds a little bit later in the year, and the seeds do float, and they'll float along the edge of the water, and they kind of root themselves and sprout up right along the top of the high water marks. So that's how they get from place to place. Similar to the seed of the bald cypress. Water is the way that they are dispersed from place to place. So bald cypress and water tupelo swamps are characteristics of lowland blackwater rivers such as the Waccamaw. Really cool. Well, how y'all doing, everybody? This month's Species of the Month was caught by Javi and Woodrow Powell of Conway, South Carolina. This here is Javi, and up in the front here, this is Woodrow sitting beside Mr. Hamp Shuping of the Waccamaw River Keeper. This is a fantastic creature. I know a lot of people out here just go, oh man, that's an old mud fish. Well, to me, that's one of the most favorite, really cool creatures out there, because this is a 100,000-year-old species of fish. It's one of the oldest species of fish on Earth. This fish has got some fantastic adaptations for survival. If you'll look at the long tail fin right here, this tail fin goes from the top all the way around. That's why they call him the bow fin. See, the top fin's very long, like a bow. When it's swimming through the water, it ripples, kind of like the bowstring on a violin. It's really cool. If you look at the tail here, there's a spot on the males right here. As we can see, it's probably a small female. There's a spot right there on the top of the caudal fin there, tail fin on that fish, that indicates whether he's a male or not. And in breeding periods, they get bright blue-green here, and bright blue in their tongue. It's kind of cool. And as you look here, his head is very hard, kind of hard as a rock, tap, 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 tap. He's got a big bony plate right here. It's very hard to set the hook on one of these fish. They have an accessory breathing organ inside their swim bladder that allows them to breathe oxygen just like humans do. They can come up, and it's a primitive lung, and they can take a gulp of air off of the surface and go back down and breathe that air just like we are. It's really cool. Another adaptation for survival that they have, and I'm going to have to use pliers to get to it. If you stick your finger in a bowfin's mouth, like my buddy learned the other day, it will tear the hide off of your skin. You can't lift these things like you do a bass because he's going to go nuts when I do this. If you pull that mouth back, he's got teeth all inside his jaws there. Whoop, we'll get a little bit closer to him here. He doesn't like his mouth being open, of course. Look at there. And the big old tongue he uses to taste things with. These things can eat absolutely anything. They spawn and they about mid-April, mid-late April in the Waccamaw usually, and they actually grow 12 inches, up to 12 inches in 1 year, in their first year growth. Amazing critters, very, very adaptable for survival in all kinds of water conditions. They can actually live for 2 or 3 weeks on the bank in a little tunnel underground. They wallow around a spot in the mud, and they can breathe air for short periods of time in a little cocoon-like nest kind of deal that they build. It's awesome. These guys here are just fantastic adapters of time, over time. Put it to you this way, when this fish first came about, there were T-Rexes on the earth, they're estimating in some estimates. I believe that's what I read the other day. It was amazing what kind of fish this is. Oh, and he's going to bite me. The bowfin, a super cool, adaptable, feisty critter. And we're going to, I guess you guys want to let him go? You going to let him go? Okay, are you going to let him go? You're not going to touch him? All right, wonder why. All right, we're going to let him go. Say bye-bye. He's got little barbels on his nose, too, you to smell with. Bye-bye. Whoosh. Well, Hamp, we've really enjoyed the day today. It's been a flat, beautiful day from beginning to end. Thank you for being such a very nice guest and very knowledgeable co-host here today. Appreciate that.
Appreciate y'all coming out.
Yes, sir. How can people get involved in your organization, the Waccamaw Riverkeeper Program?
As we talked about earlier, we're a river environmental and conservation organization. And the quickest way we could describe to you what we want people to be passionate about clean water. We're interested in water quality. And whether you're a member of our organization or not, we want you to hear the message and to learn how to be responsible individually and also stand up and make sure that people stand up for clean water in our area and the standards and the practices that are in place and need to be put in place. And you can become involved as a volunteer in our organization, helping with programs, helping control the river by going to our website, which is www.winyarrivers.org, WINYAHRIVERS.org, O-R-G.
Gotcha.
Or they can call my office at the Center for Marine and Wetland Studies, which is at Coastal Carolina University at area code 843-349-4007.
Okay.
And my email is wrk@coastal.edu. And they can come by anytime or give me a call or email me.
And I know you're doing a special event in a couple of weeks. It'd be a good time to plug that, too, right now, because this is going to run right before that, I believe.
Yeah, we have a series of events up and down the river all year. Our most recent event coming up is a brand new one. It's called the Waccamaw Riverkeeper Rendezvous. You're going to be there.
Right.
And we're going to have tours, canoe and kayak tours on Kingston Lake. We've got fish fry going on. We've got Coast Guard Auxiliary there. We've got Wildlife Refuge there. We've got Nuisance Wildlife is there with their program, and that's going to be on June the 4th.
Okay.
At the Conway Waterfront, Peanut Warehouse, down to the river, and we'll have some historical storytelling going on.
Neat.
And that will be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on June the 4th.
Is there a cost involved with that program?
Absolutely not. This is a non-commercial event.
Okay.
This is, we want people to come by and have a good time on the river and celebrate the river.
Fantastic. We really appreciate it. And on behalf of the Waccamaw River out here, it's a great place to be. I mean, it really is. You can't beat it. It's one of the most beautiful shows we've ever done. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. And the natural beauty is it's like living in a picture, like living in a painting or something, and that's, I guess, the best way to put it. So thank you for being our special guest today.
Well, thank you for spending all this time on this wonderful treasure.
All right, that sounds good. For Forever Wild, I'm Ben Abercrombie. Hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching.